Today is February 4th, 2021. Let's go back 22 years to February 4th, 1999. On this night, an alleged case of mistaken identity and a definite case of incompetence fueled by racism resulted in the death of an innocent 23-year-old Ghanaian man named AMADOU Diallo. AMADOU Diallo was one of 4 children born to parents Khadijatu and Sekou Diallo. He was born in Liberia and spent time traveling all over with his family since the family business was trading, but he spent most of his time in his native Guinea. AMADOU did not even come to New York City until 1996, and while he was there, he made a meager but honest living selling cassettes and accessories on the city sidewalks. Basically, he lived the life of an average American immigrant, trying to work for a better life. In many ways, he was just like all of us.
My son was a dreamer, and he always dreamt of going to the US and getting a computer degree. He had no criminal record. He never even had a traffic ticket in New York City. AMADOU was this young, generous person. When you see him, when you have chance to meet my child.
Welcome to my channel. This is Quest Talks, home of the best talks, and today's video is dedicated to AMADOU Diallo. I wanted to share AMADOU's story with you for a few reasons. Mainly because of my personal attachment to the story, but also because the story is still so relevant to society today. Firstly, I'd like to say to AMADOU Diallo, rest in power. You are gone, but not forgotten. I hope that this video will share your story and do justice to your memory. Let's get it started.
Yeah. Quest
The murder of AMADOU Diallo occurred 21 years before the murder of Breonna Taylor, but the circumstances of his story are still just as relevant. The basic story is this. AMADOU Diallo came home late from getting something to eat and was standing in front of the building that he lived in. At this point, he was spotted by 4 officers wearing plain clothes. The officers were doing surveillance in the area because they were a part of a now disbanded Special Street Crimes Unit. This unit specialized in getting armed felons and criminals off the streets. Kinda sounds like the description of regular police, right? At least that's what I thought, but these guys were special. They operated mainly throughout the night and were all plainclothes officers to give them an edge. And on the night of February 4th, 1999, 4 of these plainclothes officers, Kenneth Boss, Sean Carroll, Edward McMillan, and Richard Murphy, would see AMADOU standing outside his building and mistake him for a serial rape suspect from an earlier unsolved crime. They confronted AMADOU, he reached for his wallet, and they shot 41 times in his direction, striking him 19 times. That is the basic story. No emotion, no interpretation, no hyperbole, just facts. The officer's side of the story was this. AMADOU matched the general description of the serial rape suspect that had been reported earlier. Also, since he was standing outside of a building, they felt like he may have been a lookout for drug dealers. They say they asked him to stop and show his hands. When he took his hands out of his jacket, Sean Carroll saw a black square in his hands and yelled, "Gun!" Edward McMillan was closest to Diallo at the time, heard this, and in fear of his life, he took 3 shots and then began to back up. Upon backing up, he took a tumble. Seeing his partner fall, Sean Carroll thought that he had been shot, so he began to fire as well. The other 2 officers were still in the car, but they heard the ricochet of all the shots and assumed that a firefight was underway. After this, they both hopped out and now all 4 officers were opening fire. 2 of the officers emptied their clips, 16 bullets each, and a total of 41 shots were fired between all 4 officers. In the end, their actions were deemed justified. An internal NYPD investigation was held, and it determined that the 4 police officers had responded in a way that any reasonable officer would in the same circumstances. After being charged with second-degree murder, all 4 officers were acquitted. And now for AMADOU's side of the story, via his family and the witness on the scene that night. According to the sole witness, none of the officers spoke a word to AMADOU. The witness did say that one of the officers screamed gun, but that was all. No other commands were issued, and the police gave no warning to AMADOU that they would begin to open fire. AMADOU's parents felt strongly that their son was killed by the police deliberately in a tragic case of racial profiling. Because he looked close enough to their suspect, and black lives aren't valued by the police, they decided to kill him. After the acquittal, AMADOU's parents filed a $61 million lawsuit against the city of New York for violating AMADOU's civil rights. The case lasted 4 years until they inevitably settled for $3 million under the city's wrongful death law. Fun fact, at the time that this happened, it was the largest settlement given out for a wrongful death case for a single defendant ever. Then in April 2002, the NYPD disbanded the Street Crimes Unit as a result of the case. Without a doubt, this case was extremely polarizing. There were protests, public outrage, constant news coverage, and it even became a subject of the 2005 New York City mayoral race. Many people to this day feel the 4 officers acted justifiably. Some even blame the media for sensationalizing the case and unfairly condemning the police. Well, here are my thoughts. As I mentioned in the intro, I have a personal attachment to this case. No, I'm not related to the Diallo family at all, but I was a 7-year-old West African boy living in the Bronx, New York in 1999. This case is one of my most vivid childhood memories. It was the first news story that ever actually penetrated the Pokemon and Rugrats covered walls of my childhood mind to give me some understanding of the horrors of the real world. I mean, I was only a kid, so I didn't understand everything, but I took some things away. And what I took away was, I'm black. I'm West African, I'm an immigrant, I live in the Bronx, and I stand outside sometimes. And that was enough to fill me with fear. This was honestly the moment that I began to fear having interactions with the police. 8 years before I would ever even commit a petty crime like shoplift, I was terrified that the police would kill me just for being me. But like I said, I was 7. So now, here are my thoughts as an adult. If the behavior of those 4 officers on the night of February 4th, 1999 were truly what any reasonable officer would have done in that circumstance, then I'd have to say the fear I felt at 7 years old wasn't inexperience or naivety, it was wisdom. I mean, by all accounts, the police never warned before they shot. Even in the police account, after hearing Carol shout "gun," McMillan got so scared that he shot 3 times and then backed up. He then proceeded to fall, breaking his tailbone by the way, which caused Carol and the other officers to begin to shoot. Now really imagine that scene in your head, cause when I do it looks like a Three Stooges slapstick skit, not like the behavior of competent police officers. Don't get me wrong, I can relate to reacting poorly out of fear and making a mistake that I cannot take back. I, like most people, haven't murdered anyone, but I think we can pretty much relate to that basic circumstance, which is probably why some people found them sympathetic. But if you really put yourself in the shoes of those 4 officers and consider your job, your training, your experience, and the situation, to me it was shared incompetence. I mean, they were part of a special unit, which means that they had advanced training compared to that of a regular officer. They had semi-auto pistols, bulletproof vests, ballistic training, a bulletproof vehicle, and they had the numbers. It was 4 on 1. McMillan was the closest to Amadou and didn't even check for the gun himself. By the police account, he took Carol's word, even though Carol was behind him. Then, instead of announcing that he was armed to Amadou and trying to get him to comply and drop his weapon, he just panicked. I mean, let's just say Amadou was armed. Like, let's say Amadou actually had a gun that night. McMillan could have ran back without shooting, gathered all 4 of the officers, they could have approached, guns drawn, forcing him to drop the gun. I mean, he didn't have a gun, but even if he did, they could have handled that situation in a manner that did not result in him losing his life. How many times have we seen school shooters, spree shooters, rampage killers, who are apprehended by the police, assault rifle in hand, peacefully? Because the police are organized and they put together a show of force and they communicate with the suspect to let them know that there's no way out of this without them surrendering or losing their life, and most people choose surrender. But the problem here seems to be that Amadou is black. In most of those situations that I've seen where the suspect is apprehended without incident, the gun happens to be in the hands of a white man. But I digress. Instead of taking any of those precautions, McMillan panicked, he shot, he ran, with really no disregard for himself at the time. That's how scared he was, because he ended up falling down the steps, breaking his tailbone. He reacted so pathetically that his partner thought he had actually been shot. And we all know that police lose all professionalism when they think that one of their own is hurt. They all see red. It's just like a universal trigger for cops. So in my opinion, after McMillan's reaction, there was no way Amadou would survive. In my mind, after hearing Carol shout "gun," knowing that he was behind him, McMillan's ability to react responsibly was Amadou's only lifeline. And sadly, he let him down. I do not look at these 4 officers as victims. I can sympathize with them to an extent where they were at work, let their training fail them, and the worst possible outcome was the result. The problem is, for average citizens like me, that would mean a day at work where you make a bad investment, or spill hot soup on a customer, or forget to buy supplies that you're gonna need for an upcoming event. Something where no one dies. The issue here is that these 4 men weren't average citizens. They were 4 men who chose to take on the life of police officers, who were trained to serve and protect, who swore an oath to do so. And when they became a part of a special crimes unit, serve and protect becomes expanded to investigate and verify. They took the time to do none of this. If you thought he fit the description of the rape suspect, then you apprehend him and you bring him in. As far as I'm concerned, this tragic event was caused by police incompetence. Plain and simple. In the end, The Diallos lost a son and gained $3 million. Not an even exchange in my opinion, and not in theirs either. His mother continues to be an activist to this day, and she is a support system for the mothers of other men who have been slain by the police. Of the 4 officers involved, 3 of them left the force. Kenneth Boss, he stayed on the force. Fun fact about Kenneth Boss. 2 years earlier, in 1997, Kenneth Boss shot another black man dead, but that case didn't get enough notoriety, so he kept his gun and his badge. He didn't keep his gun and his badge after the AMADOU case, however. He was assigned to desk duty until 2012 when he was given the okay by Commissioner Raymond W. Kelly to start carrying a firearm again. He retired from police work in 2019, so he's no longer with the force, but another fun fact, in 2015, only 16 years after getting away with murder, he was promoted to sergeant. Well, those are my thoughts, and it saddens me that I grew up to watch tragedies like this happen year after year after year after year all around America. I don't know when it'll stop, but I stopped being optimistic a long time ago. I can honestly say that I just hope we all stay safe and live long enough to find some purpose in life. I hope you're able to learn something today, and I hope you join me in keeping Amadou's memory alive. This story happened before the Black Lives Matter movement, but it's important that we say his name too. Amadou Diallo, rest in power. I'll end the video here. Thank you for spending this time with me today. I appreciate it. If you liked the video, please let me know. I would appreciate it if you subscribe. And as always, please share your comments down below. I want to know what you guys think of these videos. This is Quest Talks, home of the best talks, signing off. Peace.